Get to our exclusive interview with President Trump. World News Tonight anchor David Muir had his temperature checked before sitting down with the president, and they sat at a very safe distance, 11 feet apart. The president in Arizona for his first major trip in nearly 2 months, and acknowledging the risk of reopening country, but vowing we're going to get back to normal.
I want to start with reopening the country. I know this is your first trip back out into the country in quite some time. And you've said that the decision to open the economy is the biggest decision I've ever had to make. How do you, and I suppose this is the central question, how do you save livelihoods without risking more lives?
Well, I think actually the decision to close the country was the biggest decision I've ever had to make. And I've said that very loud and clear. I mean, we had the greatest economy in history, in the history of the world, not only our economy, it was our greatest economy. Best employment numbers, best numbers in every single way. And they said, sir, we have to close the country. I said, what are you talking about, close the country? Because nobody's ever heard of such a thing. And we saved millions of lives by doing it. And by putting the ban on China very early was a big thing. But the biggest decision I've ever had to make is closing the country. And certainly this is now also a big decision, but the people want to go back to work.
I want to ask you about what Dr. Fauci said last night about the reopening of the country. He said it's the balance of something that's a very difficult choice. How many deaths and how much suffering are you willing to accept to get back where you want to be? Do you see it that way? Do you believe that's the reality we're facing, that lives will be lost to reopen the country?
It's possible there will be some, because you won't be locked into an apartment or a house or whatever it is. But at the same time, we're going to practice social distancing. We're going to be washing hands. We're going to be doing a lot of the things that we've learned to do over the last period of time. And we have to get our country back.
Let me ask you about testing.
Yeah.
Right now in America. You know, early on there were hurdles. Dr. Fauci at the time acknowledged it was a failing. But for Americans who do want to go back to work, should they be able to have access to a test now? Should they know whether they've been exposed to the virus? Should they know if somebody's at the workplace asymptomatic and they simply don't know? Or do they have to go back to work having faith in their leaders and you, Mr. President, that the workplace will be safe?
No, they don't. They have to test if they want. You know, some people are strong believers in testing.
So right now, for any American worker who's nervous about going back, if they want to get tested to see if they've been exposed to the virus, they can have access to both the antibody tests.
They should have no problem.
And
they should have no problem. And as good as this is, we're even getting better. We came up, don't forget, the cupboard was bare. The other administration, the last administration, left us nothing. We didn't have ventilators. We didn't have medical equipment. We didn't have testing. The tests were broken. You saw that. We had broken tests. They left us nothing. And we've taken it and we have built an incredible stockpile, a stockpile like we've never had before.
Many people have heard you say that along the way and have wondered, though, you know, you're 3 years into your first term. You're now applying for the job again. What did you do when you became president to restock those cupboards that you say were bare?
Well, I'll be honest, I have a lot of things going on. We had a lot of people that refused to allow the country to be successful. They wasted a lot of time on Russia. That turned out to be a total hoax. Then they did Ukraine, and that was a total hoax. Then they impeached the President of the United States for absolutely no reason.
There were 2 new studies out in the last 24 hours. One was from Johns Hopkins that said the death rate could double if we're not careful with this reopening of America by June, the daily death rate. The University of Washington saying we could have 135,000 Americans dead by August. What do you make of those numbers, Mr. President?
A couple of things. First of all, these models have been so wrong from day one, both on the low side and the upside. They've been so wrong. They've been so out of whack. And they keep making new models, and they're wrong. Those models that you're mentioning are talking about without mitigation.
But let me ask you, because you've responded to those 2 new studies out with these forecasts, your own numbers have shifted over time.
They have.
You said 60,000 Americans could die. That's what you said last week. I watched your town hall over the weekend. You said 75, 80 to 100,000 people could die. Which models are you looking at? And what should Americans be prepared for as we reopen the country and head into the fall where we could see a potential second wave?
Well, the upper number was, as you know, 2.2 million people. And then there are some models or charts that showed higher than that. But 2.2 million people. I always felt 60, 65, 70, as horrible as that is, I mean, you're talking about filling up Yankee Stadium with death. So I thought it was horrible, but it's probably going to be somewhat higher than that.
Let me ask you, because people will look back, and we have an election 6 months from now. They're going to look back to the beginning of this, and they're going to wonder what you knew and when you knew it. And I have no interest in going back over everything you said, but there was one thing you said that perhaps you could clarify. You said this was at the end of February. A full month had gone by. You'd stopped travel from China. And you said of the cases here in the U.S., when you have 15 people and when the 15 within a couple of days is going to go down to 0, that's a pretty good job we've done. Help me understand that moment. Did you really think we were going to have 15 cases in the U.S.?
So let me, I said you would say worse than that. I said one person one time, and it's true. There was a time when we had one person in this country. We knew about it, we worked on it, but we had one person, it mushroomed, the 15 people mushroomed. Other people were coming in also from Europe. Don't forget.
But we're at more than 1 million cases now.
But don't forget, in January, okay, let's talk about cases. You know why you're at 1 million cases? Because we have more testing than anybody else. If we tested as much as these countries down here, okay, who don't do very much testing at all.
I understand the argument you're making.
But look at your question.
No, but you understand there's a huge disparity between 15 and more than 1 million cases. What was it, an intelligence failure? Where was the breakdown that we didn't know the scope of this?
Look, let me tell you this. I closed the border, if you want to use that term. I banned people from coming into China.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you one more question about the nearly 70,000 Americans whose lives have been lost. Grandparents, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters.
Right.
We've lost more people now than we lost in the Vietnam War. What do you want to say to those families tonight?
I want to say I love you. I want to say that we're doing everything we can. There is nobody, I don't sleep at nights thinking about it. There is nobody that's taken it harder than me. But at the same time, I have to get this enemy defeated. And that's what we're doing, David. That's what we're doing.